you know that Russia, the largest country in the world, began as a small principality known as Kievan Rus in the 9th century? Indeed, the origins of this expansive nation can be traced back to a humble beginning. Kievan Rus, a federation of Slavic tribes, was the first organized state in the area. This federation was ruled by a group of Varangians, or Viking warriors, who ventured into the region from Scandinavia. The most influential of these early rulers was Rurik, who established a dynasty that would govern for centuries to come. But it wasn't just about conquering lands and ruling tribes. The rulers of Kievan Rus were instrumental in shaping the cultural and religious identity of the region. In the 10th century, Prince Vladimir the Great made a decision that would forever change the course of Russian history. He chose to convert to Christianity, specifically the Eastern Orthodox faith. This was no arbitrary decision. At the time, Kievan Rus was surrounded by various religions. The Bulgars practiced Islam, the Roman Empire was Catholic, and the Byzantine Empire was Eastern Orthodox. Vladimir, in his wisdom, chose the Eastern Orthodox faith, believing it to be the most compatible with the Slavic temperament and way of life. The introduction of Christianity brought about a cultural revolution. It led to the creation of the first written Slavic language known as Old Church Slavonic by the missionary saints Cyril and Methodius. This language became the liturgical language of the Eastern Orthodox Church, and its alphabet, the Cyrillic script, is still used in Russia and many other Slavic countries today. The adoption of Eastern Orthodox Christianity also influenced the arts, architecture, literature, and law, deeply embedding itself into the very fabric of Russian society. It created a distinct cultural identity that separated Kievan Rus and later Russia from its neighboring kingdoms and empires. As the centuries rolled on, Kievan Rus would evolve, setting the stage for the rise of a powerful empire. And the echoes of these enigmatic beginnings can still be heard in the Russia we know today. Imagine a time when the Mongols held sway over the early Russian principalities. Picture a period when the vast steppes of Eurasia were dominated by the Mongol Empire, a force that swept across the continent, leaving an indelible mark on the regions it conquered. This era, known as the Mongol Yoke, began in the early 13th century and lasted for a couple of centuries. The Mongols, under the leadership of Batu Khan, grandson of the great Genghis Khan, invaded the Russian principalities, instilling fear and gaining control through their military prowess. During this tumultuous period, a small principality began to rise in prominence. It was Moscow, a city that would eventually become the heart and soul of Russia. But how did this happen? How did Moscow manage to rise from obscurity under the oppressive Mongol rule? The answer lies in the clever diplomacy and strategic alliances of Ivan I, sometimes known as Ivan Moneybags. As the Prince of Moscow, Ivan I played a crucial role in navigating the complex political landscape of the time. He served as a tax collector for the Mongols, a role that allowed him to amass wealth and power. This wealth was then used to build fortifications and churches, attracting more people to Moscow and cementing its importance. Ivan also nurtured diplomatic ties with the Mongols, which earned him their trust and protection. This gave Moscow the stability it needed to grow and flourish under the Mongol yoke, while other principalities struggled against the invaders. Ivan's policies set the foundation for Moscow's rise as the political and religious center of Russia. His successors continued his work, gradually expanding Moscow's territory and influence. The stage was set for Moscow's ascendance to power, and the Mongol yoke was about to be thrown off. The Mongol rule had inadvertently paved the way for the rise of a new power in the east. Moscow was on its way to becoming the epicenter of Russian civilization, a status it still holds today. The year 1547 marked a turning point in Russian history as Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, took the title of Tsar. This was a significant shift, as it marked the establishment of the Tsardom of Russia, a centralized Russian state where power was no longer divided among various principalities, but concentrated in the hands of the Tsar. Ivan the Terrible, despite his ominous moniker, was a ruler of remarkable ambition and drive. His reign, though characterized by periods of brutal repression and political instability, was also a time of substantial territorial expansion and administrative reform. Ivan's rule saw the initiation of Russia's eastward expansion into Siberia, a vast and largely unexplored territory that held untold potential in terms of resources. This was a monumental task, one that involved not just military conquest but also the establishment of trade routes, the building of fortresses, and the gradual integration of diverse local populations into the Russian sphere of influence. The Siberian expansion was not just about acquiring new lands, it was also a calculated move to gain geopolitical power. The resources found in Siberia, such as fur, gold, and later oil, would prove crucial in bolstering Russia's economy and asserting its dominance on the world stage. And yet, beyond the material wealth, Siberia offered something perhaps even more valuable: a sense of limitless possibility. Here was a vast frontier, a place where Russia could carve out its destiny, unfettered by the constraints of the old world. But for all its successes, Ivan's reign was not without its challenges. His later years were marked by bouts of mental instability, political infighting, and widespread social unrest. These issues, coupled with the vastness of the territories now under Russian control, would set the stage for a period of profound turmoil and change. Even as it expanded, Russia was poised for a time of turmoil and change. As the Tsardom gave way to the Romanov dynasty, Russia would continue to evolve and adapt, its history a testament to the resilience and fortitude of its people. In 1613, a mere boy of 16 was crowned Tsar. His name was Michael Romanov, and his dynasty would rule Russia for over 300 years. The Romanov dynasty, a family lineage that would shape the very fabric of Russia, began with Tsar Michael. He was a subtle force, working diligently to restore order and stability to a country left fractured and fragmented by the time of troubles. But it was his successors who would truly leave their mark on Russian history. Enter Peter the Great, a towering figure both in stature and influence. With a vision that extended beyond the confines of Russia, Peter sought to modernize his kingdom, drawing inspiration from the West. He implemented sweeping reforms, overhauling the military, the government, and even societal norms. He built a city from scratch, St. Petersburg, a testament to his ambition and a symbol of Russia's newfound status as a European powerhouse. But the Romanovs' reign wasn't just about the men. Catherine the Great, a German princess turned Russian empress, continued Peter's work. She expanded Russia's territory, annexing Crimea and partitioning Poland. Under her rule, Russia grew to become one of the great powers of Europe. Yet beneath the grandeur and the glory, discontent was brewing. The vast majority of Russians were serfs, bound to the land and to the mercy of their landlords. The reforms and expansion, while beneficial to the state, did little to improve their lives. The gap between the rich and the poor widened, and resentment grew. The seeds of revolution were being sown. The Romanovs, for all their achievements, were blind to the plight of their people. Nicholas II, the last Tsar, was ill-prepared to deal with the mounting social and political pressures. His inability to address the grievances of his people and his reluctance to relinquish power would be his downfall. The stage was set for a revolution that would change the course of Russian history. In 1917, the centuries-old Romanov dynasty was overthrown, paving the way for the establishment of the Soviet Union. This was a time of upheaval and change, as Russia was swept up in the tide of the Russian Revolution. The country was transformed as the Bolsheviks, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, seized power. Lenin's rule, though short-lived due to his untimely death in 1924, was marked by radical policies and the establishment of a socialist state. It was during this time that the groundwork for the Soviet Union was laid, a state that would dominate the global stage for much of the 20th century. Following Lenin's death, Joseph Stalin rose to power. His rule was characterized by a brutal regime of totalitarian control, industrialization and collectivization that left millions dead. Yet it also turned the Soviet Union into a superpower. The era of Stalin was followed by a period of relative thawing under Nikita Khrushchev, and then the stagnation under Leonid Brezhnev. However, it was under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev in the 1980s that the most dramatic changes occurred. Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, led to an unprecedented era of transparency and reform. But these changes could not halt the inevitable. In 1991, the Soviet Union was dissolved, marking the end of an era. From its ashes rose the Russian Federation, a new entity that was both a continuation of and a departure from its Soviet past. The establishment of modern Russia was not without its challenges, as the country grappled with economic crises, political corruption, and a contested position on the world stage. Yet, despite these challenges, Russia has emerged as a resilient nation, continuously reshaping itself in the face of adversity. From its beginnings as a small principality to its current status as a global powerhouse, Russia's history is a saga of resilience, revolution, and remarkable transformation.